So the reason why, we chose this topic is because we feel there isn't any engagement with the political class. There's something called political settlement. And the idea of political settlement is that, interest groups are meant to request, what they want from power holders. And this is a normal practice. Right now, as elections campaign is going on, different candidates and political actors are trading. They are negotiating. There's trade for barter. You do this for me, I do this for you. And social, economic groups also take part in this. I don't know if you guys are aware, the presidential candidates have met with different economic groups. I know Tinubu has met with agricultural, the agricultural, groups in the north. I know both candidates, or almost all candidates, have met with people from Lagos Chamber of Commerce. I know they've met with Arawa Consultative Forum. So, they meet with different groups. They meet with, different elders, and, negotiation, is ongoing. And I spoke with a few of my friends, and I said, hey, we young people are, supporting this candidate or the other without actually any spelled out promise for us in black and white. There is no direct negotiation. Most of our negotiations are, it's done indirectly. There's no real youth agency. And when you have that kind of, structure, it means that, the political economy of the country will continue to benefit a certain class. And those is the class of people that can engage in such negotiations. The people that are not engaged in such negotiations do not benefit directly. And we find the digital sector to be the most unique sector, I think, in Nigeria. It's the sector where if any politician or power holder says, I'm going to put in effort, towards, it benefits our class of people, which is, young people. It does not benefit so much people that are 80 years old or 70 or 60. It benefits young people. If government says they will spend, say, maybe more money on government, GovTech, on ICT, to improve public service delivery, if they will say they will cover last mile connectivity by, bringing internet, to the most rural parts of the country, these things benefit young people the most. There's research that shows that for even increase in internet connectivity, there's an increase in the GDP of the country. And so if that GDP directly, or that growth that directly comes from young people, then it means that young people have more bucks in their pockets. Third quarter of last year, the ICT sector outpaced the oil sector, which is very, very remarkable for a country like Nigeria. And one of the reasons why I'm happy we'll be having a discussion with Dr. OKON, who is also, a mentor of mine, to see what he thinks about this. Do older people feel that if they allow or they support the digital economy as much as they should, then it means wealth transfer? And if it means wealth transfer, do they feel threatened? Do this class of people feel threatened by a growing digital economy? I'll give an example. For the past 24 hours, I've been discussing with people about our cashless policy. And the biggest issue I find in the cashless policy is that you have 40-something percent, close to 46% or so of Nigerians are not connected to the internet. How do you say you have a cashless policy when that does not capture the fact that there's a huge digital divide. Does your cashless policy address the digital divide? If we look into the policy recommendations that CBN has put for a cashless, are they targeted at solving gender digital divides? Are they aimed at increasing gender digital equity? Right? These are questions we must ask ourselves. Why? Because 2/3 of women in northern Nigeria do not have access to internet. So how are we expecting a cashless society when 2/3 of the women in the north do not have access to internet? Even for, say, you want to deploy, even if you say you have like a very good cashless policy, is it encouraging or is it supporting the fintech industry? What charges? What are their costs? What burden are you putting on them? In Sweden, which is, I think, one of the best test case for a cashless society, all their mobile to incentivize citizens, all mobile transfers were free, whether it was short code or an app or whatever. As long as you're using a mobile phone, that it was free. And in Nigeria, I could have even argued that they should pay people like they're paying people to sell in dollar. Why? Because you want to encourage people to get off, cash. And what that starts to do is that it starts to digitalize the financial system. But then you have to ask yourself, are there people that feel threatened by that? Are the bankers committee, threatened? Do they feel threatened by that? Is this an age thing? Do they realize that the political economy is no longer in their favor? And I think, these are the things that, this thought basically that shaped the topic, of, discussion today. And I think it's something that, we must really think as a society, as a digital sector in Nigeria, that we must organize effectively, not just to come and have this sort of discussions, but to be able to make, concrete demands, to power holders that this is what we want from you. If not, do not expect, support from us. Because like Kingsley Moghalu said, I'll just end with this. To solve Nigeria's problems, we must understand what precisely those obstacles are and take political economic approach to confronting them. Basically, it's all about sharing formula. And the truth is, the number one way we can organize ourselves to negotiate for a better equity is, within a digital, society. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, TOBORE. That was really an engaging session. Thanks for carrying the whole house along.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I think you've given us like what I would deem a very, very, very nice intro for us to enter this conversation proper. So so if you're just joining us, this is the Digital Economy Forum, policy think tank about Nigeria's digital economy. And we're having TOBORE and I can see TRACY here as bird lady. I'm correct, right? Yeah, I think that's TRACY.
Yes,
you're correct, Emmanuel.
Yeah, nice to hear from you, TRACY. Thanks for joining this space. So I think the first things first, I think we should actually, so that we are all on the same page. I think I got a few hints from TOBORE's intro, but so that we're on the same page, we need to understand what economic diversification and wealth transfer actually means in the context of the digital economy. So TOBORE, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think I'll say something, then I'll allow TRACY to also say something. Wealth, let me I think I said a bit more about, wealth transfer. The truth is, as long as we are, if we are truly honest about economic diversification in this country, we have very few, I won't say we have very few, but we have quite a number of options. Maybe extractive industries, which is mining, You have petrochemicals. You have what else? Maybe agriculture. Of course, you have a lot of arable land. But I think one of the most unique um, um, sectors we have right now is the digital sector. Why? That's the sector that houses young people. You don't need to have maybe, I don't know, $100 million, to invest in a mine. Whether it's an oil field or a gold mine. You could basically teach yourself how to code and start to write, develop products. We are headed into the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, I don't know, you guys cover, tech news. You see what's going on with AI, chat GPT, and that just indicates that in a growing global economy, what we want to focus on, if you are, thinking futuristically, is the digital sector. If you are really serious about, economic diversification, you cannot say you are serious about it and not thinking about this sector as we are entering into a fourth industrial, revolution. To explain what industrial, revolutions are to people that do not understand, we had the first industrial revolution where, we started using steam engines. The second industrial revolution was when we started mass producing globally. The third industrial revolution was when, IBM, the likes of IBM, produced, those massive computers that, would take up, maybe we have in the 60s and early 70s. And that third industrial revolution produced companies like Microsoft, right? Companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies today. Now we're entering into a fourth industrial revolution where AI is basically going to change, work forever. Nigeria has not taken part in any of these industrial revolutions, the first, second, third. We never built steam engines. We never really, perfected the art of mass production. I wouldn't say we had any real big computer companies in the 90s or 2000s. But then there's a new era, beckoning, and there's an opportunity for us to catch on to where the developed world, where developed countries are right now, and it's a no-brainer, like I said, for any power holder to say my economic diversification should include the digital sector. But then the issue is within a political settlement, like I was saying earlier, when you start to do that, you will have people that do not feel comfortable in a digital economy. I'm just postulating. It's a possibility. You may have people, but I gave an example of, the cashless policy, and I asked a simple question. If the CBN is serious about, cashless policy, why doesn't it include these things that, support a more digital financial system? Why doesn't it support, this fintech, companies? Why doesn't it say zero charges if you are using mobile transfers like, they did in Sweden? Because that, if you're not, pushing that hard, then for me, it shows there may be a conflict, of agenda. And if there's a conflict of agenda, the question we need to ask ourselves as young people is, does this benefit us? Or if it's not benefiting us, maybe it's benefiting someone else. And from that perspective, you start to think of wealth transfer. Because as you have a more diversified digital economy, the wealth would naturally, transfer from, the hands of, the oligarchs that are holding on to industries that are difficult for young people to penetrate, to, the industries that will now be thriving, which are where Hello?
Yeah, that's very very interesting. Sorry. Yeah, so I think that's a nice picture on how to think about economic diversification. I have some follow-up questions. I'll be back to you, but I'd like to hear what Tracy thinks about the the whole concept of economic diversification and wealth transfer in our digital economy.
Okay, thank you so much for that really interesting perspective, Tobore, right? But I think I'm going to come from the part or from the perspective of the fact that I think that the economy has already been diversified, but we just need the right sort of incentives, if that's the word, or structure that helps to um, first create the awareness that these there's no need to diversify anymore, but that everybody can have access to these things, right, or these streams of wealth, right. For example, in the digital economy, like Tore mentioned, AI and the rest, right. How do we help young people, even adults, right, be able to access these this framework, right, or this vertical, right, and how they can make money from it. How do we help the older generation sort of phase out and bring the younger generation to phase into it? How do we keep them interested? Because you see, this generation, and they call them Gen Z, they're not really interested, right, in they're very bored, right? So the consistency that the older generation has in pushing and following something through, they don't. They just want something that can happen now, and the next day they're not really interested in that, right? So I think that the future of work is digital and it has come to stay. And it is important for us, right, both men and women, young and old, to start to identify the roles that we are supposed to be playing in these different verticals. So this would mean that there would be the people who will have to do the work, and then there will be the support system, and it could be technical support, and then there'll also be the financial support. So this would be the investors, this will be the financiers, and this can also be government. And so government is investing in support in the form of funding. Government is investing in support in the form of technical support. So maybe creating programs or creating policies that allow for international organizations to sort of come in, right, and create these opportunities, right, for our people here, our young people and older people, to be able to tap into the very big or voracious sector, which is the digital economy, right? So, I mean, that's what I think. But we need to be able to sustain that interest, right? Like I said, this generation is, as much as they're very digitally savvy, they're bored easily. So we need to be able to sustain that interest. The diversification has already happened. There are too many verticals that you can have wealth or get wealth from in the digital economy, but we need to be able to make sure that there is that right incentive. So both with support, financial, technical, but with the right policies that help to create um, a great ecosystem. For example, we talked the Nigerian Startup Act that was just signed into law, right? Implementing it is one of the things that will make sure that these support systems come in. I know that there are other bills and laws that are already in the works, right? All of this is to be able to strengthen the digital economy so that everybody who needs to be there, or like we said, the wealth transfer can happen. More people jump on this ship and sail with it.
Awesome, Tracy. So talking about the Startup Act, right? So and just opposing that with the whole fact that a lot of Gen Zs are not interested in a lot of these conversations. So we're having more and more 20-year-old, 19-year-old founders that are doing awesome stuff. And they hear things like the Startup Act and they're not interested. And it's not just them, like a few more people, young people who just want to be left alone and build stuff. They just want to think about products. They want to think about marketing. They want to think about even raising funds for the startup. Uh, so how do you think we can generate these interests so that these guys will not just be spectators or bystanders in policy making and all of that. And I think I was
Can,
very impressed with the, sorry?
yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think I was very impressed with how the Startup Act was structured, a lot of volunteers and young people trying to actively participate in the process. But I'm thinking we need more. We need more. So how do we get this interest?
I think maybe Tracy start up and I would like to finish.
Okay, so I think that for the Nigerian Startup Act,
Hi, Tracy. I can't hear you. Or is it just me?
sorry, can you hear me now? I'm saying that, so I think
Okay.
this is what is called borrowed lethargy, right? And this is borrowed lethargy from the quantum of mistrust between the people and the government, right? So from their parents, from aunties, from everywhere, the body language is that, you know what, government never brings anything. And that's typically what I had, when I was approached to join the working group to help with the Nigerian Startup Act. I'm like, man, I know they do. Anything government, I know they do. But when I understood that the people who were coming from the government, right, like the government was serious, and so it sent serious people to the private sector and then other stakeholders in the digital sector to say, let's build this thing. So when I saw them, I'm like, okay, these people are not coming to play here, right? And so that's important. We need to build back that trust. We need to build back that gap for young people. And that's what we can do with implementation. Implementation shows that we're serious. And it's also important that in driving the awareness to let them know that you can't build in isolation of the government. For example, we know that the reason why we started even solving for creating the act is because, for example, we woke up one day and then go kada, they say you should not do again, right? Woke up one day, they say we should not do blockchain. Government is going to be government. And so if you say, oh, I'm a young person, I'm building a product, if government wakes up and shuts down your sector or disrupts your sector, right, all your solution, all your product will not work. Do you understand? So young people need to understand that we need to work hand in hand, that the Nigerian Startup Act, right, is and every other policy or framework or structure or solution that would help would come at the intersection of disruption and displacement, right? So for government is trying to solve that problem where if there are fallouts from disruption, if there are fallouts from new innovations, how do we solve it? How do we handle it? How do we plan ahead, right? So someone is innovating the fintech sector and is creating something, but is forgetting that people who are not fully onboarded on the new process will lose their jobs. So those people will go back into the unemployment market, right? Government has to solve for that, right? And young people who need to now move into this sector, the schools, the curriculum, the agencies, the frameworks are not prepared to handle this. Government needs to be prepared for that. So if you're building, for example, now we now have more, like everything is digital, so government needs to invest more in line of right of way in internet service, data access to, if whether we're investing in our satellite or whatever. Government now needs to invest in infrastructure that will help us thrive in that sector, right? So you cannot not be interested, but they do not understand how critical this is. And so it's important as our role during implementation to tell the story of how the founder is connected to the government and how without the government, the founder cannot thrive. With all the investments they get, if they cannot do their business well, right? Because the large market that they're serving, it might be in African countries or whatever, but if you're not able to sell properly to the Nigerian market, I don't even think that, or I think that a founder might decide that they're not worried if they're not selling to the Nigerian market. If they're strictly maybe for an American market, it's fine, right? But if you're selling to a Nigerian market, you have to be concerned about what the government is doing and what it can do.
Thank you, Tracy. TOBORE.
Yeah, I'm here with Dr. OKON, the legendary Dr. OKON, and I would allow him say, if jump on, this and say a few things, after a couple of statements. I support what Tracy has said, and that is why DEF exists. DEF is a think tank. Think tanks produce policies. Our primary focus isn't just to do the research. We want to advocate for global policy ideas. We want to make them homogeneous first, And what do I mean? We're partnering with different community leaders. For example, you are a community leader in your own space. We've partnered with the CEO of Pivo, partnered with a few people as ambassadors, and our community is growing. One of the our founding members is in the governing council of the FinTech Association. What that means is that even with Tracy, what that means is that we have tentacles and we have sort of a democratic institution where we can hear what everybody has to say and then develop policies that suit the different players in the digital sector, whether it's digital rights, whether it's internet penetration, towards closing digital divide, like Tracy said, developing infrastructure for last mile organizations, whether it's support systems, because policy would always evolve. The policy we work on today wouldn't be the policies we'll be focused on in the next 2-3 years. But young people need to understand the democracy does not work without participation, and that is why we're having this conversation. And education. So at this point, I leave it to Dr. OKON to step in.
Okay, my name is Tim OKON, and I'm fortunate that in my lifetime in Nigeria now, young people are beginning to break the mold by just being simply supplant or being tied to the tentacles of our historical past, which is what has brought us to the present. Let me, TOBORE introduced to me what we're trying to do, and I welcome the idea, because I think that young people have something to say, and for people like myself, we have a listening ear to the industries of the future and the things that are going to shape are really not natural resource. So I will start from the premise that if you look at the stock market 100 years ago, you would find that resource owners. I've said everybody. London Rhodesia used to be a natural resource company, Lonro, and Sir Roland was notorious for some of the deals he struck in Africa. If you ask a young person now what Lonro is, many people wouldn't know. I know because I did much of my education in the United Kingdom, and in the dying days of Mrs. Thatcher. Those were the dying days of Lonro, etc. And the cell phone became a big item. And what we are experiencing is an upheaval that is not really new. And I think I overheard TOBORE talking about the first industrial revolution, the second, from steam engines to all the wonderful things that are happening today. But we must recognize that this has been studied long ago. So, for example, there's use of Schumpeter. I actually teach macroeconomics. So it's called creative destruction. And I think the young lady who spoke talked about disruption. Yes, creativity sometimes lends itself to disruptions. And unemployment, at least temporarily, is often not a bad thing, because it concentrates the mind. People begin to look at the talents that they've got, and it leads to dramatic and improvements in economic efficiency. But economic efficiency would not occur if you don't have economic freedoms. And this is where I'm hoping Nigerian government should pay attention and listen to what young people are saying. Okay, the first point to make is that economic freedoms are at the very heart of innovation. The right to choose. Okay? So instead of spending our energies maybe fighting Bitcoin and whatever it is, I may not understand it fully, but we have to listen to what our young people are and what the trends are to see how we can capture the best and protect the vulnerable from some of the consequences of creative destruction. But it's an uphill task or battle to want to disprove yourself Schlumpeter, because Nigeria, for example, is a great beneficiary of the cell phone revolution. If we would have had to build phone lines like America had to do, then we would require 200 years. But look at Nigeria today.
GSME.
That's right. The GSM technology and the value it has created. The example is quite staggering. Before the cell phone revolution, and of course the adoption by a government that came in to dismantle the notion, because in the mindset, I remember someone declaring that cell phones were not for the poor in Nigeria. So a government came in 99 and had the bidding for cell phones, etc. The rest is history. It started being quite expensive, but today a SIM card you get for free. Okay, per second billing came in when a fourth operator came into existence. When MTN was saying that they couldn't do per second billing. The key thing is economic freedoms drive innovation. And that's why I'm talking about economic efficiency, because I'm a petroleum economist and I deal in those terms. So it's important. And when this happens, it creates usually a temporary economic disruption. The role of the state is not to stop creativity. The role of the state is to serve as or to create a social safety net to protect it. Well, it's not to stop the march of economic development on creativity, but to make sure that there is a safety net. That's where there has to be the interaction between governments and innovators, whether they be in the telecom space or the digital space, as you people are rightly, whether it be there or in other spaces as well, the agricultural space, the system whereby, look at China's transformation. A country that couldn't feed itself now feeds itself. And those are the dramatic things where you encourage economic freedoms. And I think that is at the heart of what we need to discuss. I think most people can understand the fact that, if you only have one baker in the country, you are likely to have one design of bread. Well, whether that matters or not is subject for a lot of discussion. But I would say this, that where there are multiple bakers, you get your bread baked with a special twist and all kinds of that is what we are talking about, creativity. And it thrives best where there are economic freedoms. And it is the economic freedom that drives this innovation and etc. and the things that we want to see happen. It is economic freedoms that would allow for the Nigerian Startup Act to begin to make an impact, the right to choose or to say, okay, I want to try to make this. And open and transparent systems also support that, and that the talents of the very best should come to the fore and be manifested. We are in a democratic era now, and I say we are in that era. I hope it, God forbid, that it to be reversed, because I think we're learning some very important things, that innovation actually also helps create level playing fields. There was a time when university education was, or ideas were impossible to get outside of a university setting.
Yeah.
Okay? Education is being transformed now. That's why I say that our democratic structures, and I'm speaking in context of NSAS and all, our democratic structures would never be fostered and affirmed and well grounded in reality if you have an illiterate electorate, okay, and a poverty-stricken electorate. So it's important what you guys are doing. I've been told about digital rights, etc., and those are they're important concepts in themselves. The fact that we need to have open societies and societies that support and affirm, especially for societies such as ours, multi-ethnic, multi-whatever, and we need to encourage the affirmation of some of these values, which transcend religion, they transcend tribes and all nationalities, etc. Those are important values. So those would be my contribution. That it's I was looking at what we term infrastructure: hard, soft, critical, non-critical, and so on. But I would say that for economic transformation, the digital space is actually sustaining and creating. It's actually critical infrastructure. It is an infrastructure that can be used to accelerate transformation, like the example I made of landlines versus cellular phones, etc. That transformation, I'm a living witness of it. And since I'm an economist, I would throw in another statistics. Prior to this transformation, telecom sector or digital space contribution to GDP was about 1%. Today is about 7%. Now that's been a 7-fold increase in the country. So imagine if innovation came to agriculture, if innovation came to education, innovation came to so many spheres, the transformation will be enormous. And so I actually look forward to a wider engagement, and TOBORE knows I'm supportive of these efforts. We old people should be able to, or should be comfortable enough in our own skin to be able to hear what young people are saying. We may not understand every concept, but at least we should be able to sit and observe and listen and watch them grow the Nigeria of the future, a confident, less corrupt, a more humane and open society that we all expect and look forward to. So thank you very much. Those would be my comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. OKON. Yeah, I hope you don't mind, because that was really, really insightful, and it really, really exposed a lot of things, but it also brought back questions I've been having recently. You talked about the move from landlines to mobile phones and how it caused a big digital revolution, right? So I've been thinking about it since, but I decided to ask this. Is it not possible that there's a limit to how much we can leapfrog without getting some of our basic infrastructure right in Africa?
I agree with you. Leapfrogging in 2012, I was in London and attended a mini investment summit on Nigeria, and they remember the old BRICS concept, the next 11, and so on and so forth, etc. At the heart of that is just simple infrastructure. Without infrastructure, you really cannot make some of these dramatic changes. So we look at infrastructure in terms of, that's why I said there is hard, there is soft, and critical infrastructure. Now, obviously, the hard infrastructure is the infrastructure of having, highways, waterways, and so on and so forth. Those are
satellites.
Yes, that's right. And then you have iron and steel industries, because without steel you cannot engage in meaningful industrialization, cannot take place. Unfortunately for our country, and I'm going to say something very controversial because I'm usually regarded as controversial, okay? But I'm going to state one thing, that if you look at all of the critical things that have been put in place, whether it is, this has all happened under military regimes in Nigeria.
Yeah.
If you remove the role of the military, and I can tell you, the democratic stewardship has been very weak. It's been weak because many of those critical infrastructure, the iron and steel plants never got anywhere. The Mambila hydroelectric dam, okay, hasn't gotten anywhere, okay. The refineries that are supposed to build the civilian regimes have been unable to. So it is this ineptitude that needs to be corrected for that leapfrogging to take place. So, for example, if in 2006, when I left the US and I said, okay, I'm going to come back to Nigeria, and I did so on the strength of three critical things. The first was that in 2006, Nigeria's foreign reserve was in excess of $66 billion after debt forgiveness. Okay? So there are many people who came here hoping that economic transformation, that the resources that we now had was going to be spent on exactly this hard, soft, and critical infrastructure. So I go back to that. But what happened subsequently? Well, since then we have had how many years of civilian rule? Remarkable. But can you point to me any of that hard, soft? So those of us who came back with an understanding that this was the highest Nigeria's foreign reserves were, and it could be used for good. And what did we do? We spent between 2008 and 2018, we had spent $63.8 billion for subsidy. Okay.
So I would like to even ask you a question at this point. So do you think a digital transformation, national digital transformation, can disrupt the current economic status quo, say even in the oil and gas industry and beyond?
It can if it is driven If the digital economy is not driven by the state, it's private sector driven. Because this is why I'm talking about economic freedoms. You see, you have to get the fundamentals right. You know, economic freedoms, are essential. They are key component. And when we teach macroeconomy and macroeconomics, those concepts are quite important in relation to your ability to have basis for economic transformation. So the rate of growth and economic development, etc., has often lagged behind, because there was a 2017 article, I think it was either in the Financial Times by the Africa editor, who is very well known. All of us who I think it's the Financial Times, not the Economist. Anyway, but from that press, and they were critical of the state for missing an opportunity. What was the opportunity? Prices of oil were low. Economic reforms, exchange rates, and all kinds of things could have been equalized. By now, we wouldn't be talking about this hyperinflation we're experiencing, and so on and so forth. But that was a wasted opportunity. Okay? And that wasted opportunity is what is now causing the difficulty that we are now facing, excessive debt and so on and so forth. So clearly, you can improve economic growth, GDP growth, and all that, but at the heart of this is that you need economic freedoms and the right to choose. I still don't understand why everybody in Nigeria should buy fuel from one monopoly. It doesn't make sense. We would have gotten over this, and all kinds of businesses would thrive.
Do you think tanks have a role to play in economic freedom, or what role do you think they have to play in economic freedom?
Well, think tanks are of itself. I mean, you can have think tanks that are not. Think tanks must be in pursuit of truth and reality, rather than a think tank seeking to be a Joseph Goebbels, like in German, Hitler's Germany. Okay, you do not want to have think tanks that are inverting reality, and those are not contributory to any. But yes, again, it is those economic freedoms that bring about disruptions, and when those disruptions occur, okay, when they occur, something new, emerges. From these ashes, let hope arise. That's the way. The ashes of old technology and things are all around us. But what often emerges are successful things. I mean, these days I do not, people, I'll give you a good example. All right. I've not had any appreciable amount of the new currency because I've not had to use cash anywhere, and you just look at, and this is private sector led. You can go to Ghana and use a card. The Nigerian banking sector has adapted very well, and
but not well enough. Because we're speaking about that earlier on.
Well, yeah. They have. But imagine if all the key banks were owned by the state.
Yeah, then that's what's up.
That's really the contrast that we need to make. But yes, Nigeria's economic growth should be at least 3 times its population growth rate. Without which, we are going to, there's a theory, the Malthusian collapse. Yeah. Well, I don't agree with most of it for religious reasons, but I also want to state that the economic reality is that if there is overpopulation, there are stresses onto the system. Both the social and economic system suffer stress. You cannot have a nation of displaced people and think that you can get reasonable economic growth. The answer is obviously no.
All right, Doc.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. That was really, really, really powerful. Yeah, so I think I saw someone wanting to ask a question. I think it's Wizard, if I'm correct. Was requesting to speak at some point. At Venuputa. Yeah, and I think this is a good venture to ask questions. I mean, it's not every day you get to have a one-on-one with someone like Dr. OKON. And yeah, and there have been some interesting points that we've been addressing with TOBORE and TRACY. So far, so good. Yeah. Yeah.
If no one has a question, I'll just make a few more comments. I think you asked a very, very interesting question earlier on, which was, I think TRACY tried to answer that about, what is young people's, like young people think, oh, what is my business, about public policy. And, she gave an example of Gokada that was, I think chased out of Lagos and Nigeria. Doctor spoke about, how he kind of, spoke a bit about that. Okay, if government steps in and says, okay, they create the regulatory environment for things to thrive, like they did for the telecoms, industry, things can really pick up. The truth is that we do need that leapfrogging. Whether that leapfrogging happens, through public-private partnership is a different discussion. Some days ago, I think last week, we had the discussion with Dr. Onika from Affordable Internet, Foundation.
AI for AI, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Founded by the guy that invented, the World Wide Web. And she said, we spoke about development finance for this sort of things. And we kind of agreed, we don't want to, look to development finance. We need to change our way of thinking. However, we both agreed that development finance is the cheapest, finance you can get towards building this sort of infrastructure, which means the state has a role to play. Because if you want to tap into that development finance, it has to be a public-private partnership. If we want to close the digital divide for the 40-something% of Nigerians that are not, online, for, let's say, a cashless, a cashless society. In fact, for the average entrepreneur, he should be interested in closing digital divide, because what that means is a bigger market. When we say 40-something% or close to 50% of Nigerians are not online, it means like 100 million people are not online. And so if you are a Paga or PayPal or Flutterwave or whatever, it means right now, no matter how good your marketing and sales is, you are going to cover maximum 120 million people, maximum. And so you should be more vested in these sort of things. Not only that, you should say, okay, what are the issues I face? And that's what DEF exists for. We are collaborating with a lot, not just the Onika's organization, a lot of think tanks globally. We're collaborating with a lot of think tanks to, get what their public policy ideas are and try and make it local. And that can only work through engagement with people like you and through engagement with entrepreneurs. It could be Bitcoin, it could be digital currency, it could be, NFTs. How can we, make these things, how can we make them, more established within, the Nigerian market? And like Doctor said, within a free economics framework where the government isn't the one determining, what the digital currency is like in Naira, right? And I think it's very important. Basically, think tanks exist to fill gaps that the government cannot, the government does not have the capacity to fulfill. And that is why we exist. We believe together as different players, we can, demand, make policy demands that begin to shape, the kind of environment we want to, really play in.
All right, thank you, TOBORE. So I think TRACY dropped out. But yeah, I'm thinking, how do we go about closing this digital divide? Because I wrote an article last week about the data wars in Nigeria, how all the telcos are just racing to get more people online because data is becoming one of their biggest revenue sources. So, but the reality is a lot of people are still offline. I mean, when I read MTN's IPO prospectus from 2019, I saw that about 53% of their internet users are incidental users, people that just use 5 megabytes in a month. That's so even when we look at the NCC statistics and see, MTN has 60 million
users.
So it's not really painting the full picture. So there's a lot to be talked about when we talk about the digital divide, talk about fintech companies, startups, building things for apps and blah, 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 blah. Whereas a lot of people are not online. So yeah, I'm curious to know what you think about this.
Like I was saying earlier, there are different approaches. I think the most important thing, really, the most critical thing from my perspective is engagement from the community to say we want more. That is the most critical thing. The most critical thing is the community saying we want a more digital Nigeria. That is the most critical thing, because you would not, as much as a lot of people will agree. Again, Doctor is a petroleum economist. This is someone that has spent, decades of his years, decades of his time, really building Nigeria's oil and gas industry. Like I said, he's the person behind our petroleum industry bill, saying that he believes, of course, the digital sector has the potential to leads to massive transformation. And he gave an example of the telecommunications industry and how mobile phones, without the things that were done, then, we wouldn't even be having this discussion, right? And it's now time for us to, make another, major leap and another major push. If not, we're going to be left behind. That's just the reality. How we go about that is not as important as the demand, in my own opinion, because different multilateral organizations can sit down today and say, okay, yes, I think this can work or this can work. There is actually development finance. I know of a company that is being financed, I think, by IFC. The IFC is an organization under the World Bank to do last mile connectivity in Ghana. So what they do is they find, gaps, and IFC gives them the money to actually do last mile connectivity. That isn't happening in Nigeria because we don't have the environment or the framework to allow such things happen. And it's not because there are in private sector people willing to do that, but because the public sector or the government hasn't created that environment. And so for me, what is more important is that we begin to demand. We begin to say, these are the things that are of interest to us. I started off this discussion saying young people will benefit the most from the digital sector. I think nobody's going to argue about that. I think we all agree. I also started off saying that, this is an election cycle. And during election cycles, you have a lot of trading going on. You have, leaders of different industries saying, this is what I want you to do, Mr. Incoming President or whatever. This is what you do for me and I'll give you my support. But then we have this set of young people that, yes, you like this candidate or you like this other person, but there isn't any concrete promise on the table. There isn't any real spelt out um, landmarks that one can hold on to say, okay, yes, this is what this guy is going to do for me. Why? Because we haven't spelt out our demands in a way that it is very critical, and in a way that it affects us the most. We haven't. So I'm just going back to the fact that I'm just stressing the fact that the demands are, for me, more important than the how. The how can be figured out. There are many ways. There's IFC, there are World Bank. Like I said, we've partnered with, a lot of our collaborating with a lot of global think tanks that are they have different options. There are different ideas. But then the ideas for us are not the most important thing of how, because we can always come back to the community. We're building a community, digital economic forum of different leaders in fintech, leaders in agrotech, leaders in edutech, whatever. And they can say, okay, yes, I agree to this policy proposal, or no, I do not agree to this policy proposal. And if you do agree to this policy proposal, can you share it with your community? Can we, like you said, what the Nigerian Startup Act did, can we, as a community, demand for, this kind of reform that will benefit, our community better? And I think that, for me, is the critical link really missing for us to make that kind of leapfrog. You have international communities ready, you have, funds ready, but then there needs to be a demand. There needs to be a call, to action from the digital community for us to get what we want.
All right. I can see you, Wizard, again, requesting to speak. Let me approve. You should have access to speak right now, I guess. Okay, yes. Okay, Wizard.
Hey guys, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi TOBORE, hi everyone. Unfortunately, my network has been bad, right? Maybe just goes a long way with the conversation, right? Internet penetration isn't really that great, right? I think I've just been listening in on the conversation, right? And I'm thinking to myself, because I work in a very new space, right? A very new and frontier space, right? I'm more fascinated by the future of decentralization, blockchain technology, and artificial intelligence, right? So majority of my work is built around that. And while I would always love to like piggyback and think about what type of government policies can help what I do, right? It's also a difficult thing to double down, right? Especially in these early stages, right? Because I'm thinking about building a product that will get a couple of users onboarded, use the technology, participate.
Is that me, or did I lose Wizard?
Yeah, I think it's his network.
These are the issues we're talking about.
Yeah, these are the issues. These are the issues.
I had an interview with.
Should look like, right?
Okay, it's back.
Okay.
Hi, Wizard. Sorry, we lost you for a bit there. I think we lost you at the point where you said you have issues knowing when exactly to double down on. Yeah, I think that's something around that.
And we lost him again.
Oh dear.
Well,
Okay.
I think what he was trying. I think what he was. Yeah, I don't know if he was. Yeah, maybe he can send us a chat. But I think what he was trying to say, from the little I got, was, not concentrating on public policy, um, um, as an innovator and as an entrepreneur. Most people, I think, are not wondering, you're not really thinking the way someone like me would think, because I'm a public policy analyst, right? So I'm thinking, how can I plug in the gaps on the public sector part, so that the digital economy can thrive? And you, the entrepreneur, are not supposed to be thinking about that, because that's not your job. Your job is to is to innovate, like Doctor said, and my job is to try and create the freedom of expression and a free market environment for you to really do your thing. However, back to what I was saying, I think the DEF as a think tank platform exists so that there can be collaboration between this public sector and the private guys, because like it or not, like you said, there needs to be a shift, an aggressive shift, towards developing infrastructure. And two, we never know the issues that different tech players may have. We know the government is very restrictive towards, digital financial instruments, such as, cryptocurrencies and NFTs. And we think we can unravel that. And that's just an example. There could be tons of other examples, within the digital sector. But without this sort of platform, how do you solve or unravel that public policy issue? Because it's a public policy. We're not saying be focused on it. Do your thing, focus on your innovation. But we exist to provide the cover. We exist to translate your pains into policy proposals. We exist to bridge the gap between all these development institutions, multilateral organizations, academic think tanks globally that are interested in in digitalized Africa, to bridge that gap with them and the local players, so that the ecosystem can really thrive. That's it, and that's just the idea of DEF. I don't know if that speaks to what Wizard was asking, or I'm not too certain.
Okay, Wizard is back.
Yeah, like at 100%, right? Is that it's that level of awareness, right, whereby I come up with a conversation and talk about certain problems that I think that government might be in the way. We sort of think about a way around it, or a policy that will sort of not just help myself, but like the whole industry, right, that I'm in. And that will go a long way towards like bridging that gap where we have the policy, the policy makers, the people with the ideas, and the people with the ability, the policy analysts, right, like you well mentioned, and the innovators and the entrepreneurs, right. It simplifies the whole process. I hope you guys can still hear me, because I might be rugged in and out, right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's important, right? I think the next thing, and I hope I can make this as quick as possible, right, is also the thought of leapfrogging, and I think it's a buzzword. Like most things, it's a buzzword, right? Without the proper foundation, you're not building anything. Most of the innovation, or like the digital, transformation happening in Africa per se, is simply because of the infrastructure being built. The fintech industry that is growing, tremendously to an extent, is because we have a great banking infrastructure, right? One of the best in the world. So we're not going to leapfrog into anywhere. And I think there's a responsibility to let people know that.
Hello?
I think we've lost Wizard again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, yes.
Yeah, I was enjoying his direction.
Yeah, I was enjoying that. Yeah, I was enjoying that too.
Into industries.
Okay, I think it's coming well.
It's breaking up. Hello, Wizard. Are you there? Can you hear us? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, so yeah, I 100% agree with what he said. I've noticed. So even last week we had a conversation with a founder of a company called Glass, from Silicon Valley, that is focused on GovTech. Why GovTech? Because GovTech has the ability. GovTech is like almost unknown. in Nigeria. But GovTech has the ability to, improve public service delivery, to make public service delivery more open and transparent, because you will now have access to data. You can see where money went. That's how, a lot of countries basically operating. But in Nigeria, it feels like we're in the Stone Age. That doesn't mean change is not possible. And when we had this conversation, it was being moderated by the editor of TechNext, Tomiwo, and we agreed that, I think we agreed to disagree, that this may not, be this may be difficult really to implement, in Nigeria, and it boils down to one thing: is pessimism. I know, if you look at the reality of where we are, it seems like what we're talking about is just a dream. And really, it really is. But then you need big ideas if you really want to transform a country. You need big ideas if you really want to, solve our problems, because our problems are big, right? And I'm saying the same thing. If we come together and we say, these are the demands we're making, I am saying that there are multilateral organizations, there are development institutions, there are people, there are think tanks that want to see this sort of thing happen in Africa, because they want to close the digital divide. They want to solve the issue of inequality. They want to solve sustainable development goals. Almost all the sustainable development goals can be solved. Let me not say almost all, but a lot of them can be solved by technology, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare through health tech, whether it's reducing poverty, giving jobs. This ICT is very, very critical. For example, the recent African Continental Free Trade Act that was passed requires the movement of goods across borders easily, like you have in the EU. That can only work if you have an integrated customs union, which means Nigeria will have maybe a customs ICT infrastructure that will be linked to Togo, linked to Cameroon. This is what was signed. Now, implementation, as we know, is a different thing, but the groundwork in terms of policy has been made at the highest international level, as an African level. The question is, can we translate that to a Nigeria? Can Nigeria prepare itself for an Africa Continental Free Trade Act where you can have movement of goods? What is the reason why Alibaba or Amazon or any big e-commerce struggles to find place in Africa? Because of this. Because they say if they set up in Nigeria, they're going to set up Amazon.ng here, the Amazon.gh in Ghana. And then if you buy or sell something, how would you move across the border? They're asking themselves this question because Africa is so complicated. 54 different laws, 54 different customs unions. How the hell are they going to manage that? But you see, the African Continental Free Trade Act answers, tries to solve that. But then at that high level, you need to keep on working on it until it trickles down. And as it trickles down, there will be opportunities for people in ICT to deploy, ICT systems for customs, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in Ghana or elsewhere. Which companies will be providing this solution? And then you now start to think of GovTech. What I'm trying to say is, it's a big problem, but then it's a big opportunity for the digital sector. And the digital sector needs to start to think of it as not an impossibility, but an opportunity. Because if you have multilateral organizations like the United Nations saying we want to solve this problem because we believe if we close the digital divide, more women will go to school. If we close the digital divide, more women will be financially included in the economy. If we close the digital divide, we will solve education. And they are putting hundreds of millions of dollars behind that. Then why aren't we at the local stakeholder level tapping into that? Towards the end of last year, Biden, approved $300 and something million towards a digital Africa. Why are we not positioning ourselves towards that? So there are a lot of problems, but then when I see problems, I also see opportunities. And I think that's something critical that needs to happen, and how we need to change our mind to say, okay, we need to just lay our bed how we want to lie on it. And as we start to walk towards it, we will see that things will move in the direction. So it's a big problem. I'm not denying that fact, but then, I also see a very big, opportunity if we decide to take it on. Yeah.
Yeah, big opportunities. Let me give Wizard another chance to
Okay.
complete his thoughts if he's still there.
Can you guys hear me? I'm back.
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Well, I totally agree, right? It's a massive opportunity. Yeah, but here's what I've learned, right? Even within the innovators within the space, right? We have this pessimistic tone, and this is amidst building, though. So it's not like we're not building. It's not like we're not trying to create that environment, but we still have this pessimistic tone, right? And it just stems from frustration, right, of the system. Is that you and some things are easier for a certain demographic, right? And I'll be honest with you, from foreigners within our country than they are from indigenes within the country. So, and I think that's a policy to really and I think that should even be in the Indigenous Act, I think there's something like that. But we don't have that playing out, in real time, right? And then another huge problem is a large amount of the investment capital that comes into startups is not coming from within, you know, be it government or high net worth individuals within the country to build this digital environment, right? That trick, it's happening a little bit now, right? But to the best of my knowledge, right, it's foreign angels, it's
Yeah.
foreign VC companies, right?
Yeah.
And then you're dealing with investors that do not understand the climate. They do not understand the problems, right? But they have certain expectancies. You're, as an innovator, right, you're dealt with providing metrics, right, that will favor those kind of investors rather than actually solving the problem
The
within your
reality.
environment. So the narrative is really big. Like, the problems are huge, and it's good to have these conversations. It's good to have this think tank to know where the issues are and how we can fix them. and
Beautiful.
and like, for me, right, I'm literally at the, like, if there's anybody that's as optimistic as I am, right, is that I'm in blockchain technology and a little bit of AI, things that Nigerians they don't even care about, to a large degree, right? So, but I'm optimistic about how it can change and just affect things. In fact, when talking about wealth transfer, I believe that this is an opportunity of the largest form of wealth transfer again, like history will ever see, right? And it's simply because money is less frictionless, right? Some of the problems with trade, right, is money, the friction of money, the friction of moving goods around, then the friction of paying for labor, right? A lot of what China and let's say India have done, right, they've solved those level of, to a certain degree, right? So they've empowered industries at scales that money has flowed into. They've invested in their infrastructure. They've built, huge economies, and India is looking to even, with the way things are going, topple China. So we can learn from that, right? Because we have similar realities, right? We have, especially with India, there was there was a large population of poor people, right? But also a growing population, which, and with emerging youths, and and to be a little bit optimistic, I believe that Nigeria it's trying its best. Nigerians are really trying their best, right? If we just even look at foreign direct investment that's come into the tech startup, right? A huge percentage of that has come into the Nigerian tech ecosystem in comparison to like other African countries. So, yes, what we really need now is that dialogue, that sit down and say, hey, we're doing our best, right? We're somersaulting on top mountains. How do you make this easier for us to make sure that everybody benefits? Because I'm also, like, frankly speaking, right, no matter how we look at it, we must think about the benefit, that we're living in a deals environment. So, largely speaking, the politicians that we have, or like the policymakers, they always want to know what's in it for them, right? But I also believe that no matter what you give somebody, whether it's what's in it for them, right, there's a way technology disrupts to a point that even the people don't even understand what's in it for them, and it just pushes them out of the line, right? So it's a bit Machiavellian, right? But I think that striking those deals are important, but it's well enough to understand that the youth demographic we have, that's the only form of leverage we have to understand this technology a whole lot more than these older
100%.
older
100%.
generations, right? So while the deal might seem plausible for the next president or the next governor of your state, right, deep down you understand that this will disrupt government to a certain degree, right? Whether it's putting in computer systems in government parastatals that just remove that little bit of corruption, right? But it enables a transfer of wealth, right? And maybe somebody's company is benefiting off that, right? Somebody, government or whatever that is. And maybe that's corruption at the beginning. But that can be cut, right? Because that system can be
He's laughing.
controlled eventually. I'll be on, like, I don't, it's just the way I think. I never think, I can't fall into a fantasy, right?
Yeah,
Because
a
then
realist.
it will make us seem like we're never doing anything, right? But if we can think about the systems, at the end of the day, is like I was saying, it's the war we want to win, not the initial battle. Um, like my company's slogan is war, so it's just my way of thinking, right? So it's like,
Wow.
how
That's
do we how do we go about these things differently that long term it benefits the youthful demographic, right? The short term it might seem to benefit the older demographic, but yeah, maybe that's how you insert a virus into a system, right?
Yep.
Those are just my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Wizard. So, sorry, you have comments about that. Sorry.
I actually don't have much to say. I agree with most of what he said. I'm actually listening, and I think the number one thing I'm hearing from one feedback I'm hearing is that we need more of this dialogue. We need to engage the wider community. We need people to air their grievances and see where they need support within the digital ecosystem. And we need to encourage people and let them know that they can be optimists, and that the digital revolution can really lead to a national digital transformation can really lead to economic diversification and wealth transfer. I honestly and wholesomely believe in that. That's the number one takeaway. We need more engagement. We're just starting off. We hope, we're doing this during this election cycle because we've also engaged key presidential candidates. We hope to have speak, next week. We're doing this because we have a 15-point agenda, which was off the recommendation of World Bank for developing digital economics in Africa. The team of World Bank and African Union people sat down together, came up with these recommendations, and then we now took that and created something for the Nigerian context. And this, we have 15 demands, call it the 15-point agenda, which we have also communicated and requested that they be met by whoever wins the election. Not very important. The most important thing is that they see these demands coming from a coalition. The most important thing is that they see that 60% of Nigeria, which is the young people of Nigeria, below the age of I think 35 voting age, 60% are saying this is what they want. Because like I started off with, everywhere they go to do political negotiations, demands are being pushed out and demands are being agreed to. What demands are we making with the sector that we think will benefit not just us as young people the most, but then the country transformationally in the long term. And I think this is the most critical sector for that for us to focus on. So yeah, Just making my final comment, I think there's need for a lot more dialogue. That's why we're engaging someone like you, Mr. Emmanuel, and that's why we're engaging other listeners and ambassadors that we have decided to be engaged so that we can grow the community and begin to work. Our goal is to work and work and work and make more policy proposals based off of what the community is saying they want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, Marvelous.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, my name is Marvelous, right? So I work in the blockchain crypto industry. I mean, that's where I operate. And I think one of us here, Wiza, yeah, you mentioned same thing. All right. So I work in the blockchain crypto industry. And last week I was in Abuja and in an event, a blockchain and tech event, a non-blockchain tech event. And we're in a panel and discussion about a similar discussion like this came up. And everybody was pointing a finger at one entity as a problem. The reason we are where we are today in terms of applying technology to growth, to economic development, prosperity. I mean, everybody was pointing fingers to one entity, and what was that entity? The government. Now, being an operator in this industry, I've been privileged to be part of a lot of conversations. Players interfacing, public interface, speaking with the government, different arms of government, and as of course the CBN and the SEC even. And the deal is, these guys don't want to listen to what you are saying. We've had a lot of dialogue. You've spoken to these guys several times. In fact, even somebody, a colleague in the industry, had to say, "No way, I'm not talking to these guys anymore." Why? Because he has gotten tired. When we talk about dialogue, I think we have to understand that we've said a lot and we've said a lot. These guys don't want to move. They don't do anything that will advance the digital economy in Nigeria. Now, this afternoon I saw a picture of Professor Isopantami with at SpaceX headquarters. Yes, of course. It's with SpaceX. Starlink is a product of SpaceX. Yeah. So I saw the picture at SpaceX and I was like, wow, this is beautiful. This is nice, cool. I love that, right? But aside this, we have a lot of problems with the government bodies. They are not moving. For example, look at what happened in 2021 February. I mean, 4 days from now, it's going to be 2 years, 2 good years. The CBN went and said, hey guys, blockchain folks, from today, banks will no longer be facilitating your transactions. And it told banks, look guys, if you facilitate transactions for these crypto guys, you are going to be punished. And this is what you do: investigate all accounts that belong to crypto guys and shut it down. Now, I know a lot of guys whose accounts were shut down. I know a lot of people whose businesses were shut down because of this policy. You wake up one morning and everything you've been spending months and years to build goes down the drain. It's crazy, but this is the reality. There's no amount of dialogue you want to do and to work once these guys mean to shut it down. For example, another example is everybody in Nigeria knows what's happening in Lagos. I mean, Lagos and Abuja, you definitely must know what's happening. One day, the government came up and said, hey guys, bike ride-hailing startups, bikes like GoKada and Max and the others. Hey guys, today, now you guys will no longer be operating. And that was the end of that new market that was growing. GoKada started pioneered that market in Nigeria, and it was growing at a very, very good pace. I mean, I don't look at the numbers. I never looked at the numbers. I'm not privy to to their internal numbers, but we can't deny the fact that it made life easy for people in Lagos. And these companies, they were expanding to other cities. Life was easier. I mean, they were not riding like the crazy Okada riders we have in Nigeria, spread across Nigeria. People that ride as if they have extra life at home. No, they had, of course, yes, they had standard in the operation. It made life easy for people, but this government just came on, they say, hey guys, no way, you no longer will operate, and they shut them down. We have a lot of things like that, and it's a problem. Like I
I
said,
think,
I saw, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
go on, sorry.
Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So as I was saying, these are the problems. The government is the problem we have. The government is the problem. Create policies that will encourage businesses to operate. Provide a level playing field for startups to operate. Now, they'll probably come up with the policy for businesses to operate, and they will take the licensing fee higher beyond what startups can handle, and it's a problem. And who will take over the market? It will be foreign players that will take over the market. So things like this are.
I think
Okay, did we lose Marvelous?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah, I get what he's saying, right? I was at that same, I suspect I was at that same event in Abuja. I think it's the Africa Technology Expo,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. And there's something Dr. Oswald Osarete of
Yeah,
the
the
SSA to the
SM,
president,
yes.
yeah, the convener of the Startup Act. There's something he said that just before you make your comments about
Mm-hmm.
this, I just wanted to point out what he said. He said, where innovators see disruption, the government sees displacement.
Yeah.
And
So
so yeah, let me just.
that's exactly why I chose this topic: economic diversification, and wealth transfer within a digital economy, and that's why I'm glad Dr. OKON, the person behind the Petroleum Industry Bill, could say the things he said. Because if, third quarter of last year, the digital economy outpaced the oil and gas industry for the first time in Nigeria's history, that's a sign. But it's also kind of a threat. Like you said, if the SSA is saying that, SSA to the president is telling you that people are seeing this as the displacement, he's not, far from the truth. I work in government. I know how they feel about implementing digital. For example, you hear maybe a government office, got burnt. All the records got burnt inside. Or yes, snake swallowed this record. That can't happen if all the records are digitalized. Now, how do you think public servants feel about having all the records digitalized so that 10 years down the line, whatever they approved or signed can be recalled, right? So these are the threats that, they see when you say, oh, I want to apply, let's say, GovTech. But then we've sat down as a think tank to think about our approach, right? As in, a think tank is a public policy research institute, right? We sat down, okay, how do we want to go about our development of our public policies? We said, okay, we want to focus more on advocacy. We don't want to struggle to think about developing these things. Can we just take, someone's idea here and there, what has worked in different countries, and try and make a local solution? And I think the answer is yes. But critical to this are two things. One,
Hello guys, sorry. My mobile went off. I had to switch to another device.
Okay, that's fine. I was responding to what you were saying.
Yeah.
So I think I'm about to hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
So the most critical, aspects to getting what you want is, one, you have to form a critical mass. If 5 people say, oh, this is what we want, it's not the same thing with when you have 100,000 people or 200,000 people saying what you want. The breakdown in public policy demand in Lagos when Gokada was driven is not that people did not want it. They didn't want Gokada, but there wasn't a platform like this depth to communicate, not just communicate, to deliver, to advocate, to make sure that the right power holders see this thing, understand why it is important. And then the second, approach we're using, apart from gathering a critical mass, is we are engaging a lot of multilateral development and research institutions. When you write to these power holders and they are saying UN has an interest in this, they are saying the American government has an interest in this. When Biden is saying I'm allocating $300 and something million, towards the digital Africa, it means that it is part of their foreign policy. As a think tank, you can collaborate with these people, under a state-led, partnership, and say, okay, this is America. For example, earlier in the week, I was in communication with someone from Atlantic Council. Atlantic Council is one of America's topmost foreign policy institutions, and they are interested in a more digital Africa. Why? Because of the threat of China. They see that China is spending so much money on our digital infrastructure. If you notice, most of our telecommunication infrastructure is by Huawei. But now America is fighting that, and they see that they need to come in. How can they come in? With people like us, people that like us that are saying we want a more digital Nigeria. And when any government, I don't care who that person is, sees pressure geopolitically, sees pressure from all these, different multilateral organizations that share the same interests that you and me share, it becomes much more difficult for them to say no. And that's why we had Onika on last week. Onika, works in an organization founded by the guy that, started the world, that invented the World Wide Web. Where you have, people, tomorrow we're speaking with someone, anyway, let me not, bring that out here, but I was speaking with, some important people tomorrow. And what that just shows me is that we're growing, not just a local network, we're growing an international network so that we can basically enforce our demands or basically push our demands way better. And I think those two things, one, coming together as a critical mass, and two, partnering with institutions that any power holder finds it hard to say no, the approaches that, I think make us quite different as a think tank. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Yeah.
But we need more dialogue,
Okay.
and we need to grow. We need to grow the coalition. Yeah.
Can I contribute here?
Yes.
Right. So I understand the strength in numbers, but we can't deny the fact that the people we have in government, they are servants. Now, I'm not using the word servant to mean they are beneath us, but in the right sense of governance, they are servant of the public, of the Nigerian people.
Yeah. And go on. I want you to finish.
They are not gods. If you my company was one of the co-organizers of that African Tech Expo in Abuja, right? So, okay. Now, I listened to everything that was. In fact, I was one of. I'm one of the organizers, the main organizers of that event. So I followed everything that was happening. Even I think the guy that asked that commented or spoke I won't say aggressive but passionately about the subject of startups in government, and that was when the guy from the government, I can't remember his name, responded, right? That where we see.
Also the president.
Yes. So that he said that where we see disruption, they see I can't remember the exact word, right? But
displacement.
Displacement. But the deal is they see displacement because they are not ready to want to understand what's happening. No, please hold on. Please hold on. Remember, I told you that by the governance, they are servants, they are public servants. You are serving the Nigerian people. Now, these the startups, they are not hiding. Blockchain companies, they are not hiding. They are here. If you want to see them, call them out. They will come. I mean, we are not criminals. Like I will tell people around me, this is not a secret cult. We are not hiding. If you don't understand what's happening, then you need to see these guys. But what's happening in Nigeria is that, I mean, even all over the world, so Nigeria is not an exception. these startup founders, builders, they will have to go and these regulators, show them, guys, this is all we are doing, this is all we are doing. But over there, I believe they listen, to an extent they listen, but here, it's not always so. I mean, during
Yeah.
during the CBN saga, because of information I know, people from the block industry, they try to move out to see how they can resolve the problem at the time. But even the National Assembly had to call the governor of the central bank. The man didn't say anything. It still remained. I mean, it didn't move. What he said was what he's still implementing now. And I can still remember the words he said. He said, crypto is money, it's black, it's vague, it's opaque, it's money out of thin air. I understand that crypto now as a technology or as an application of a technology, some people are abusing it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a defining technology that can reshape our economy. Now, there are lots of people I've trained over 10,000 people in blockchain and crypto. I mean, like during the lockdown, I trained over about 2,500 people. I trained them. Now, most of these guys, they are students. Some are graduated by now. But after the training, some got crypto jobs. Some were doing some other crypto freelances, and they were making money. Now, when people are engaged with things that are productive, the crime the government wants to fight will go down. When there's money moving in the economy, the money some of these guys are getting, they are not getting it from Nigeria here. They are getting it from companies abroad. They will pay them here, and they will spend the money in the country. Money will go around. People will be, a belly will be filled. People will be smiling. Life will be happy. But no, the government came and said, "Hey guys, no more crypto. Let everybody go home," and that was the end. So I understand that, and I get the part you're saying, but we should not ignore the fact that these people are public servants. They are to serve the Nigerian people. They are to serve the public and the interest of the economy. But they are not doing that. Rather, they are making things difficult for Nigeria, for Nigeria people building businesses. They're making things difficult. Look at what's happening across the country now. Fuel is how much? I think about 300 naira per liter. It's a problem. Now, of course, I said I was in Abuja some days ago. These guys, they were business people are refusing to take the naira bill, the old naira bill. Why? They said because other people are not taking it, business people are not taking it. Why business people not taking it? They said, probably the CBN has not released naira into the new notes into the economy. So there's a lot of problems in this country, but we should not deny the fact that these guys are in government, they are public servants, and they are to serve the interest of the Nigerian people. If there's a new innovation and they feel it is disrupting, it is displacing them, then they should ask the new players in the field, come, let's talk. That's how it's supposed to be. But rather, business people are now running after government. They sit up there and they want people to come there and serve them. No, it doesn't make sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry for, let me, I know we can go on forever, but we definitely need to, I think we'll
That's
continue
right.
this conversation some other time. And I would like to thank I want to say one thing, before I thank everyone. I feel your pain, but I cannot, you know it better. I cannot imagine how, when people have learned, a work, that would benefit them economically, and then you have, public sector, just making things really impossible for them. That's just completely outrageous. Back to the point of public servants. Yes, they are public servants, but this is the point I'm really trying to stress. They are not just serving our community. You see, they are serving a lot of people. right? There's the military community, people that maybe want more spending on military arms. You have ethno-religious communities, maybe one emir, one chief, one religious leader. So Nigeria is a hotbed of fractional, communities that public servants are trying to, service. Now, within the idea of political settlement, every community is supposed to clearly, make demands. And we started off this discussion, with, really, highlighting the fact that young people have not made any concrete demand. All these demands that you've made now, has any group presented it to, let's say, Atiku or Obi? The answer is no. Right? And the truth is, election cycles are the best time to catch them, because that is when they are looking for power. That is when, they want something from you. They need your vote. They need your consent. That is the best time that maybe a chief, an emir, a religious leader will say, Oga, this is what I want from you. When you do this, this is what I want. I want you to, focus on this kind of policy. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. Now, as a community, we have not reached that stage, sadly. That is why we're doing this, even within this election cycle, to try and test it out and see what the reaction will be, and then build on from there, right? I know it seems impossible. However, it can be done. I want you to always remember that we are not the only community. There are other communities that are making demands. And that is why the topic is diversification and wealth transfer. There are other communities that want to do. There are the bankers community. The bankers committee, I think most people know, are very powerful in terms of within the banking system. They are influential, in determining who becomes even CBN governor. So how would they feel if certain things are not working for them? But you see, those guys are not us. But there they have perfected the art of making demands. They have perfected the art of engaging governments and power holders and submitting policy proposals. They have perfected that art as a community. Now, as a community, our job is not to be, is not to whine that, is not working. Our job is to keep pushing and getting better at that art of engaging, public policy holders, power holders, and public policy makers. Our job is to, galvanize support, and that's what we're doing, with DEF. I'm so sorry we don't have, more time to continue this conversation. But I thank everyone, and I apologize for taking so long. I thank you.
All right, thank you, Tobore. And I hope I think the conversation has been really constructive. I just wanted to just hear everybody out, and we'll be back on Friday, right?
Yes, Friday. On Friday. Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Wizard has his hand.
No, I'm just saying bye-bye. I was just saying bye-bye.
All right.
All right,
Thank
Wizard.
You
Thank you, Wizard.
Thank you,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Thank you, Tobore.
Sure. Yeah.